Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Mr. Moser's Meandering Monday. This video is going to be a little different in the fact that I really didn't meander anywhere this time. Instead, this video is going to be about Hurricane Helene that we had about a month ago and the devastation that it's caused in certain places. Reason I'm doing this is because I realize in a lot of my Meandering Mondays, I've gone to Western Carolina areas, and so a lot of my meanderings in the past were affected by this Hurricane Helene. And so I wanted to show you some of those areas, remind you what they look like in my videos, and then what they look like now and what's going on in those areas. So I hope you enjoy it and hope you learn a little something. This is a satellite view of Hurricane Helene hitting the United States. It started in Florida, went through Georgia, into South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and continued from there. A majority of the flooding damage happened in western South Carolina, western North Carolina, and eastern Tennessee. Most of the flooding happened in these three states because days before the hurricane, they'd already received a lot of rain. And with Hurricane Helene bringing in even more rain, there was nowhere for that water to go except into the rivers, overflowed their banks, overflowed dams that were holding back that water, and into towns throughout those areas. Data provided on this graph by the North Carolina State Climate Office shows the French Broad River averaging usually about 1.7 feet deep in most places. Each of these blue dots shows where the river has gone above that. In the 1916 flood, it reached nearly 21 feet in height, 17 feet above regular flood stage. The flood from Hurricane Helene broke those records, cresting at more than 22.5 feet. Here's another example, this time the Swannanoa River, near Biltmore, crested at 26.1 feet, which is more than 5 feet above its previous record from that 1916 flood. To give you some perspective, the normal height of the Swannanoa River is 1.5 feet deep in most places. To show you an example of a river overflowing its banks, here's the River Arts District in Asheville. This is a before, and then here's the same area after the floods have come through. Here's another startling example of how deep some of the rivers got during this flooding. Here's a house way up on a rock in Spruce Pine, North Carolina, before the floods. This is the same house during those floods. Right here, I just wanted to pause for a moment and show you this video that I found. I didn't make this one, but I found it, that shows you what areas look like from above before the floods came through, and then what it looked like after the floods came through. And you'll see in a lot of these areas how the river changed course or wiped out houses or businesses or just moved to a totally different path. So take a minute and watch this. my meanderings was to Damascus, Virginia, home of the Virginia Creeper Bike Trail. This is a bike trail up in the mountains that travels along a river, and unfortunately during this time that river overflowed and damaged parts of the trail. In addition, it did severe damage to the town of Damascus itself, which is the hub of the Virginia Creeper Trail. An example of the flooding can be seen here. This is where I recorded part of my video with a nice little waterfall. Here's that same location during the floods. Here's where we rented bikes to be able to ride on the Virginia Creeper Trail. And here's that same area after the waters had come through. The trail itself had a number of big trees that fell across the trail, basically blocking any use of the trail itself. Luckily now, a month later, part of the trail is open, but this section from White Top to Damascus itself is still closed. This part of the trail is probably going to stay closed for a long amount of time because 18 miles of the Creeper Trail were devastated by flooding. 18 trestles, that means railroad bridges, 18 of them were lost, destroyed, or washed away. And in certain parts, the trail is no longer there because the river dug out the trail and is now part of the river. Trailheads, access points, and signs have also been destroyed as well. The top picture shows one of these bridges before, and the bottom picture shows the same bridge after the floodwaters came through. Another place I took you to was the Flowering Bridge in Lake Lure, North Carolina. This is what it looked like before. It was an old, unused bridge that the community had planted gardens and made walkways through with lots of greenery and flowers and plants. It was a great area just to walk through and see how the community had come together to create this beautiful space. Unfortunately, when the floods came through, this entire bridge was destroyed. There is hardly anything left of the bridge itself, and anything on the bridge is totally gone. In this photo, the top bridge is the road that is used to get into Chimney Rock, and the bottom bridge was the Flowering Bridge that is now destroyed. Speaking of Chimney Rock, that was another meandering we did. It was Chimney Rock, North Carolina, a very small town located along the Broad River, and it was a great little area for shops and for eating and for hiking. This is what the town looked like before the floods came through this small town. So this is what Chimney Rock looked like before the floods came through, and then this is what it looked like afterwards. It was devastating to the town of Chimney Rock. Not too far away from there is Hendersonville, North Carolina, where we went a few weeks ago for the Apple Festival. If you remember, I was talking about the big street fair they have there with all sorts of apple vendors and rides and activities that you can do. Well, that town was also hit by floods. Floods came through and devastated businesses and houses and just the whole area. Luckily, it's starting to rebuild and come back, but it is going to be a slow process. The flooding from Hurricane Helene also affected us here close to home. This was the Riverwalk in Rock Hill, South Carolina, one of my very first meanderings where I showed you the restaurant, the pump house, and the walking trail that goes along the Catawba River. It's a great little area, has an amphitheater where you can sit and watch the river or hear performances. And here is the after effects of the flooding. The water totally surrounded that pump house restaurant. And remember the amphitheater I showed you? Here's that same amphitheater with me standing at the top of it because of the floodwaters. Another area devastated was the Green River Tubing Company. If you remember, I showed you in one of the meanderings where you could rent a tube from the Green River Cove Tubing Company or others in the area and just have a fun adventure just riding down the river. Well, that river flooded also, and I just wanted to show you, here was that Green River Cove Tubing Company before, and then this was after. They were totally wiped out, but they are planning to rebuild. Another area hit by the floods was the Mass General Store in Valley Cruces, North Carolina. Luckily, the old building itself was not affected by the flooding, but its little annex next door did suffer some severe flooding. I'm happy to say it is back up and open again, so that is good news. On the door outside the store, they mark the water levels of past floods, and you will see where the flood from Hurricane Helene was the highest yet. Now, I don't want you to think it was just mountain areas that had damage from Hurricane Helene flooding. The Swamp Rabbit Trail in Greenville, South Carolina is a walking, running, biking trail that goes from Travelers Rest, South Carolina to Greenville, South Carolina. Well, it also had damage from flooding from Hurricane Helene because a lot of the trail goes along a river. And you'll see trees came down and there was flooding in different areas. Luckily, most of the damage was easy to clean up, and most of the trail is open for use again. Now, I don't want you to think because the flooding is gone and is now a month later that all the work is done. As you can see here, even though the water is gone, it left behind all sorts of devastation. Houses destroyed, mud everywhere, and it's going to take a long time for things to get cleaned up and hopefully back to normal. Luckily, there are volunteers from miles around coming in to help with this cleanup, whether it be rebuilding or donating supplies or just giving a helping hand. Donations are flowing in from all over the country to help these people and communities to get back on their feet. If you want to help out, there are many organizations that you can donate to and help. A couple good ones are the redcross.org and Samaritan's Purse. Both of them are great organizations trying to help these communities. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you learned a little something. And I did mention those places where you can donate, but also you as kids, if you see people or organizations that are asking for donations, whether it be old clothes or toys or food, I hope you contribute. They're going to need help for not just this week or next month, but for a while. A lot of these people, as I mentioned, they lost their homes, they lost everything. And so we really need to help them in any way we can. So I hope you continue to think about them and are willing to help them out in any way you can. So with that, I hope you have a great day.